This video is to help you understand some of the concepts about environment and some of the things you might find in your backyard. Environment has to do with such things as climate, soil. Different environments are going to have different types of creatures in them. Both flora and fauna are going to vary depending on the environment you're in. And in this video, we're primarily going to focus on the desert environment because, well, that's where we live. And it was pretty easy for me to connect this with what's in my backyard. Okay, as I said, the desert environment. Here we're going to discuss various types of plants, mammals, reptiles. We have plenty of those, as you know. Snakes, birds, insects, arachnids, climate, soil. Every environment that you go to, each of these things is going to be different than you would find in another environment. So let's get started. Let's talk about plants. Greasewood. Now, greasewood is very specific to the desert environment. You're not going to find it in another environment. Yucca is also another plant that's very specific to our environment. And of course, the state flower, sage. Mammals. Now, jackrabbits. I don't think I can go a day without seeing jackrabbits out in my backyard. Coyotes. I hear them almost every night. Antelope, squirrels. It's very difficult to look out in my yard and not see one of these little guys. All of these are very specific to the desert environment, and they're very much adapted to living in this environment. Reptiles. Now, again, you know how many of these there are out there in our environment and in our yards. Now, the horned lizard. He's not very photogenic, doesn't like to be around people. But you know they're there, and a lot of times they're just a blur as they're skipping along the ground. The collared lizard, they don't mind people quite as much. They're distinguished by the black mark on their neck, resembles a collar. Whiptails, these guys don't seem to mind people so much either if you move slow. And all of these are very common lizards that we would find in our environment, and there are more. Snakes, you don't see them quite as often. However, glossy snakes, the last hike I went on, I saw a glossy snake, and I do see them in my yard on occasion. Bull snakes, often confused with rattlesnakes because of their markings and their behaviors. They're very common around here. And of course, the rattlesnake, which we have, but it's not quite as common, thankfully. Okay, now insects. Some of these I have listed. I didn't bother with pictures. Butterflies, everybody knows what they look like. Jerusalem crickets, kind of specific to our area. Interesting little creature. Ants. I have a picture here of a harvester ant. If you research it a little bit, they're rather interesting. Beetles are fairly common around here. Bees, flies. Insects are in every environment, and some insects are very specific to the environment that they are in. Arachnids. I probably don't need to describe what these guys are. Black widows are fairly common here in the desert. The little scorpion there, it didn't take me too much digging in my yard to find this little guy. He's no longer with us. Birds. Some birds that are very specific to our area. The California quail. It's hard not to see these little guys running around town or to hear them. Meadowlarks, very, in any desert environment you're going to find meadowlarks. Raptors, just about year-round you find those. Hawks, eagles, this is a goshawk. And willets. Specific to Nevada for most of the year. Wherever you find water, and it is out there in the desert, you're going to find willets. And every environment is to a large degree dictated by the climate and the soil. Here in the desert we have very little moisture, hot summers, sand, all those things describe a desert. Finally, you didn't think this was just free time? Assignment time. I have some categories here on the left: plants, animals, insects, arachnids, climate, soil. We just went over all of those. Now what you're going to do, if you look on the right, you're going to choose at least 2 plants, at least 4 animals, at least 2 insects, at least 1 climate factor, and at least 1 soil factor. And what you're going to do with these, for the plants, animals, all the living things that you would find in an environment, you are going to explain how these plants or animals have adapted to their environment, maybe their niche, in other words, what job or function do they perform in their environment. The climate, you're going to explain how one factor about the climate contributes to an environment being what it is. And again, the same thing with the soil. How does the soil factor into what an environment is, and what it makes it a desert environment, for example. And you can submit this in writing. If you want to include pictures and do a PowerPoint, that's all up to you. Okay, getting near the end here. We have to do some credits for images. A lot of these images I got from wikipedia.com, and they were either in public domain or Creative Commons, which means it's okay for me to use them. And a lot of these pictures I took myself in my own backyard. Thanks for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing what you come up with from what you've learned here.